We're back with another episode of Living in Granbury and Beyond. We really appreciate you tuning in to this day's episode, where we're going to jump into the fun topic of property taxes. So we're going to look at what are the pros and cons of living inside versus outside the city. We're going to compare Granbury, Weatherford. We're even going to do a quick look at Aledo, and we're going to mention a few other areas as well. Before we jump into that, if this is your first time to the channel, we're really glad you tuned in, and hopefully you find this information helpful. Be sure to click that subscribe button and press the bell for notifications so you'll be the first to know about any changes or updates or any new videos that we put out. So you'll know everything there is to know about the Granbury, Weatherford area. As always, we get people that are doing their research and they're thinking about retiring. Maybe they have a family and they're relocating. Maybe there's a work relocation and they're trying to think about where they want to live, and they start doing, some of their due diligence. And so sometimes we have people reach out to us 3, 6, 9, 12 months in advance and introduce themselves. And we really enjoy getting to meet and talk with some of our listeners. So feel free to reach out to us. Quick call, text, email is great, and we'd love to share any pointers we can with you. So we're going to jump in today looking at property taxes. Going back to the COVID years, when the prices jumped up on homes significantly, there was a lot of pressure on the taxes to begin to go up every year as well. Not only that, but homeowners insurance has gone up and interest rates went up. Those three things are the trifecta that have made housing affordability deteriorate to all-time lows. Those three things together have created a situation that's making home ownership untenable for many, especially first-time home buyers. Due to that, a lot of folks are beginning to look at some of the details about where they want to live, and they're factoring in the cost of property taxes more than they have in the past. And for that reason, what I wanted to do was to go over a few different areas so you can see the tax differences and you can see kind of where you're at, and go over some of the pros and cons of that. So I'm going to share my screen with you. Okay, so we are going to do a quick look at the Granbury area here. If you zoom in, you can see that the city limits is narrowly connected to Highway 377 here. So if we look, goes down through this little section. Now you have this little area here that kind of bulges out. You've got a little area here and you've got a little area here, but it's not that great. The biggest portion of the city limits is located right here, which is going to be the downtown area, the Granbury Square. So if you live inside of these markers, what your tax rate is 1.6%. Now, statewide, that's really good. So if you're moving from Fort Worth, it might be 2.2, 2.5, and you move here, it is going to be significantly better at 1.6. So let's just run the numbers. Let's just say you're buying a $500,000 home, and you are looking at 0.016, that's $8,000. Now there's homestead exemptions and some things that'll probably bring that closer to $6,800 or so. Let's just call it $8,000, just so we can kind of do it without complicating things. If you were to go buy that same home in Bentwater, which would be somewhere up in here somewhere, you would be outside of the city limits and you would be at 1.2%. So let's do 500,000 home, 0.012, you're at $6,000, okay? Factor in the homestead, you're probably somewhere around $5,000. So, but just looking on the surface, that's $2,000 per year more for being inside of the city limits. Now, if you take $2,000 and you divide it by 12 and you're getting a loan, that's $166 more per month. So same home, you got about $200 more a month in monthly payments in property taxes for your escrow account when you buy the home. Okay, so that gives you a general idea. Now, if we keep working this and we look at several neighborhoods that are outside of the city limits, you will see that most of the neighborhoods are actually in Granbury or outside of the city limits. You've got Pecan Plantation that's here. You've got De Cordova that's up in here. You've got Canyon Creek, Indian Harbor, Comanche Cove, all up in here, Spanish Trail. You've got Bentwater, Mallard Point, and a lot of other neighborhoods that are, all up in here. So what I'm getting at is a lot of the neighborhoods in Granbury are outside of the city limits, and because of that, they have lower tax rates. But there are some that are not outside the city limits, Abe's Landing being one that is annexed in, which is this little area right in here. You can go in here and see those. So what are the pros and cons of living in the city? Well, one thing that is good about being in the city is that you have access to natural gas. And that's one thing. You get access to the Granbury police instead of Hood County Sheriff. Not to say anything bad about the sheriff's office. There's less people that they have to serve, and so their quickness on the response is going to be a little better inside the city. Emergency response is going to be a little better. So police, emergency, natural gas. You're going to have probably more reliable things like internet infrastructure. If you have a power outage inside the city, is probably going to go out less. Back in the snowpocalypse, which was I think 2021, where we had like negative weather and it was like a 100-year freeze. Just coming off of a pretty good one here in the last couple of days. But it was a big freeze that came, and there were rolling blackouts where they were taking power away from certain people. The people in the city, for the most part, didn't really lose power. One thing is if they're on anywhere near a hospital, the hospitals don't lose power, so they kind of prioritize those. People that were outside of the city limits, more of them did lose power. So it was more of an issue for outside city limits folks. So that is another pro of being in the city, kind of a little bit more reliability. Now, where I'm at, I'm actually in Pecan Plantation where I live, and I'm going to show you it's way down here, which means we have 1.2% tax rates. However, we have HOA fees that are about $200 a month. Those HOA fees make living out here about the same as living inside the city, except, we have golf courses, pickleball courts, airstrips, grocery store, and gas station kind of inside the neighborhood. So we kind of like our own little community, a little activity center. And I've got kids, and we do a lot of fun stuff out here, walking trails and frisbee golf and swimming pools and stuff. But that aside, we have our own EMS out here, so we have very quick access. And I mentioned in another video, their response time is like unbelievable because we live in the neighborhood and they have to service a smaller community. They don't have to focus on everything outside. Its own little community that has its features and benefits. And speaking of internet, out here, I've got gigabit internet speeds. So it's through Spectrum. And so you have good, reliable internet. But you got to be careful in Granbury about where you're going. You need to make sure if you need it, especially if you work from home, you need to make sure that they have really good internet. Else you're going to be getting Starlink, which is decent, but it's not something that I would want personally. So some people may need to check on that depending on where you're going. Most of the neighborhoods here do have some form of broadband, maybe not fiber. Some form of broadband is usually available. The newer homes out here in Pecan Plantation do have fiber, though. I say that, some of them, in the newer communities. So there are places in Granbury where new constructions are being built. So I'm not talking about like a one-off lot. I'm talking like a new development area. The orchards being the one that I think of first. Okay, so what I wanted to do now is we're going to move over to Weatherford. So just notice the difference on these maps here. If you zoom in, see how the belly of the city here is much wider going through Weatherford. That is one of the issues with Granbury, is that if you look up Granbury population, it shows like 12,000 people. In reality, it's not. It's the way this map is contorted around 377, and it doesn't have this larger belly area. So Weatherford is larger than Granbury, so don't misunderstand me. But Granbury doesn't get the credit it's due for the size that it is, so it's actually bigger than what you would think off of a cursory internet search. In Weatherford, you have a quite large section of city here. And the inside the city limits in Weatherford is 1.9%. So let's run the math. 0.019 times 500,000 is $9,500 a year. Divide that by 12, $791 in property taxes per year for a $500,000 home. Again, we're not factoring in homestead exemption and some of that. Outside of city limits in Weatherford is 1.6. So if you go outside of the city in Weatherford, you're the same as inside of city in Granbury. Outside of city in Granbury is the lowest you're going to find that I've seen, 1.2. If you go outside the city in Weatherford, it's 1.6. Inside the city is 1.9%. So if you go look, what is that house in Weatherford if you buy outside of the city limits? So outside of the city limits is 0.016, 8,000. So it's $1,500 in savings in property taxes if you buy a property outside of the city limits. What does that mean for you in terms of your search? You factor in, that's going to be an extra $150 a month in taxes, or maybe somewhere closer to 120. With that, is it worth it? Could you buy a slightly more expensive home outside of the city and save on the taxes, and it would basically balance out? So then you got to see, is it worth it or not? So I wanted to make this information available to you. So let me give you a few numbers here. Aledo, if you're looking in Aledo, they've got probably the highest rated schools in the area. And their inside of city limits is 2.12%. Let's run it there. 500,000 times 0.0212 is $10,600 inside of city limits in Aledo. Now, if we go to Brock, this is outside of city limits. 0.018 times 500,000. In Brock, you're at $9,000 in Brock. So those are a few places in Parker County that get a lot of interest. So with all of that, what's the purpose of this video? I know it's not going to be a super exciting video. We're not riding around and showing you waterfront homes. We get a lot of people that reach out to us that look at Weatherford and Granbury. Those are really our two main cities of interest. We've even thought about living in Granbury or Weatherford, changing the name. So I live in Granbury, but I do a lot in Weatherford, Brock, Aledo, and I even do a good bit like in Glen Rose and moving out to Toller, a lot of Hood County, Somerville County, Parker County areas. So the purpose of this video really is to just educate our clients and people who are trying to make a decision on where they want to move. There's a chance, moving to Weatherford, and maybe you do want to live inside the city limits, and comparing Weatherford and Granbury and factoring in the property taxes so that you can make sure you're comparing apples to apples. We've had people that have went and looked at properties, say up in Fort Worth before, and they say, man, the houses are actually cheaper. There's a $300,000 home here, and it's newer and a little bit better condition than the $300,000 home in Granbury. And we're like, well, what is the monthly note on that home in Fort Worth? And they actually compare it to Granbury, and Granbury is actually cheaper, a lot cheaper because of the property taxes. So a few $100s a month. So you factor that in, and it enables you to kind of compare. You might be looking at different price points in different cities based on the property taxes. So some people don't know that and haven't factored that in and really thought through it. So we wanted to do a quick video for you and highlight some of those things. Happy to jump on a call if you got some questions. Hopefully you found this information helpful. And until the next time, I hope you guys stay warm and have a great week.